It's my goal as a community of educators, we will advance our content knowledge, pedagogy practices to make improvements in all of our curriculums. And our goal again is to promote student learning by sharing these skills and resources. And I'm so happy for you all to be here. I'm going to start with my personal experience with sexual abuse, and then you guys are actually going to interact and we're going to do a breakout group. So you're going to have one video and you're going to have one video as well as resources my curriculum specialist and I myself in my county use. So you'll have access and get to talk in a group and then come back and share your conversations from your group as a whole toward the end of our event today. All right, so when it comes to family life and our AMAZE content video, I just wanted to start off by sharing how the state of Maryland works. In the state of Maryland, our curriculum is governed by COMAR, and our content has to be approved by the Family Life Committee, Advisory Committee. I have had the opportunity to share and be on that committee for the last 2 years, and it's really been an amazing experience. We work with Hartley House organization. We have members from that group who are working in our domestic violence piece. We have pediatricians and parents from every feeder district. So we're having very different political perspectives, multi-facet. It's amazing, as well as a Board of Education member. And our AMAZE videos, actually, we approved our sexual abuse video last year, February. So serving on this council has been an amazing experience to actually get content into my school that has impact on our students. So in order for a AMAZE video, a video on sexual abuse, that AMAZE, or even a YouTube video, for example. If I like a YouTube video, to actually be legally able to share that video in my class, we have a board, essentially like a board, a group of parents, teachers, community leaders, doctors on this board, and the video pops up and we all vote and we say yes or no to AMAZE videos. And so this is all regulated through our state regulation called COMAR. And so we have a couple responses coming in. Communicating with parents, awesome. And we have a responsibility in my county. We are required to provide parents with a view night. So one of the things I like to do if parents don't have come to the view night, I always send emails and communicate and even share the links to the videos so parents can watch the videos at home. This is something that I try and do because we have rotating health classes. Would anybody else like to share?
Amy, I can read out one that's in the chat. It says that in my district, and this came from Suzanne, thank you, Suzanne, when I read in the classroom, there is no restrictions. The class has to send an opt-out form ahead of time for families, though. Would you like to respond to that, Amy?
Very interesting. So you have a lot of autonomy in the content. And yes, I know we have an opt-out form as well. And then a preview event. So very similar, but I think our educators are a little bit more limited in our curriculum because it has to be approved before we share any video. So it's pretty interesting.
Awesome. Thank you, Amy. And then in California, there's no requirement to show a particular video as long as the educator has incorporated it into their lesson. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah. And then I have one more participant, Amy. I work for a nonprofit that pushes our prevention program into the classrooms, and the districts are partnered, and we also send out an opt-out form for the families. Thank you so much, everyone.
All right, as we get started and kind of get more into our in-depth conversation about the AMAZE content, I just wanted to pause and take a moment and look at those pictures over there. Go ahead, and if you see a specific image when you're looking at pictures 1, 2, and 3, what do you see first? And I know we're all a little bit older, and so we might be able to see two different images, but go ahead and take a moment and see if you can type in the chat box what you see for each of these images. For image 1, what animal do you see? Image 2, what is the first thing you see when looking at 2 and the first thing you see when you're looking at image 3? You see both. My middle school students only typically argue for they're very strong in their perspectives. They only see one rabbit or one man playing a sax. Do you see a young woman or an older woman in the last one? Yeah. Old. Anybody see the rabbit? Most people are seeing the duck. I definitely get a lot of kids who are like, it's a rabbit. A woman with her head turned. So yeah, if in picture 3, if you see the young woman, her head is turned, so you get a side profile. If you see an older woman, she's looking down at the ground. All right, so typically I share this activity with my students to get them to recognize that it's okay, that there's two sides to every story, and there's perspectives that we might not see the first time, but we need to hear and be respectful to everybody's perspectives. So we're all different. We all come from different backgrounds, different cultures, and it's important to have a clear understanding of our own perspective in relation to our students. And it's important to be willing and open to other people's perspectives, as well as respect them when discussing human sexuality. So this is one of the things I think, dealing with different perspectives, but also during the middle school years, being willing and open to hear everyone's perspective. So this is a little activity I do. My students. So this is a little bit more. The first one we're going to talk about is sexual abuse can happen to anyone. And this is one of the AMAZE videos if you haven't used it. Again, I just go through that when I'm creating the lesson, I have to have approval. I look for pre-made slides, but if not, the county hasn't pre-made slides, I would have to send the slides to my curriculum specialist to get approval. And I worked with the curriculum writing this past summer, to make our slides and tie them into an older lesson. Currently, the video is only approved for 7th grade classes, and I use it also in 8th grade. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this presentation I share with students and kind of go through it a bit more in depth. You will have access to this presentation, the sexual abuse presentation, and many more with a takeaway at the end of our Zoom call. So I wanted to give you guys a takeaway with additional resources. So you'll have access to this at the end of our conference. Okay, so one of the things that up is tied with the perspective. We go through norms and expectations. Having a discussion about sexual abuse, I prompt students about vulnerability. I'm asking students to be vulnerable, and we're having a conversation where people will feel vulnerable. I've just been reading Brene Brown, for anybody, Dare to Lead, and it's an amazing book. But being vulnerable, she emphasizes a need for there to be trust among the community of people who are speaking. And so what I found is setting boundaries when it comes to any AMAZE video, and setting boundaries with students. It's really tricky when you have a student who tends to just make snarky comments all the time about anything. And so really setting boundaries in a classroom. I have class sizes of 34. And this is an expectation. And I say, if we cannot meet this expectation, the plan for you is to work in the media center or work in the front office. And so I have a clear boundary. because students are being asked to be vulnerable, and they need to feel safe. One of the other things that I'm not going to go ahead and play the video. If you haven't seen the video, I'm going to just kind of break it down here. The AMAZE video does a great job being real with students. It gives students an option for an option to call if they need support, and it's through a texting hotline. The approval of this video was a little it wasn't really black and white. We had a gray area when in the video it says, well, this shouldn't happen to me. And so I typically have whiteboards out. Students can write, give feedback, but part of that vulnerability in that piece was kind of saying, okay, what does it mean to feel safe? So we talked about that. And then in the video, I asked, what does it mean it doesn't happen to everyone? And parents in the Flat community, they were a little uncomfortable with that comment, but it's real. And these videos from AMAZE are real. And so I pause and spend time breaking. After the video plays, I usually go back to that comment and say, what does this mean? What does it mean to you? Also, this video does an amazing job with explaining that it's not your fault and distinguishing to students that when sexual abuse occurs, it's not their fault. And with that, and then our definitions, kids tend to become vulnerable. This video specifically, a couple weeks ago, opened a conversation I had with a student. They typically don't engage. I saw their hands up multiple times, asking multiple questions. And so when I allowed kids to work with the whiteboards further on in the slides, my proximity got closer. I engaged in questions. Minutes turned into lots of time talking to them, sharing my personal, experience. And my student finally opened up that she was dealing with sexual harassment in her home. A family member had traveled from overseas, was staying with them, and I was able to escort her up to the front office. I gave an interview with a police officer, and we got her support. I've also had a lot of students talk about her sexual harassment on the digital piece, and the digital piece has been so influential in who they are, and they feel very comfortable talking once we go through those slides. And I also, if it's crickets for some reason, I always go over the sex offender cyber tip line website, and I show students how to report on the tip line somebody who has sexually harassed them in a gaming app through Snapchat and all these other resources. And extension activity with the sexual abuse lesson is sex offender registry. If you haven't taken a look at your state sex offender registry, that's also an opportunity to share information about that. That's a lot of me talking. I want to get into our breakout groups, but from that AMAZE video, if you have any other extensions or if you want to build a lesson, I highly recommend your learning management system. You can do discussion posts, exit slips. Further in our breakout room, you're going to have access to a Google document. The Google document is an interactive kind of research-based. They click a link, they answer some questions. The Pear Deck option, is anyone familiar with Pear Deck? It depends on your county. I think our county has purchased a Pear Deck subscription. It turns any slide into an interactive presentation where they can draw on slides. You can get instant feedback. It's almost like a Zoom session live with your class. So if you haven't seen Pear Deck, it's awesome. There's also Play Pause It, Ed Puzzle out there. So many different great things, as well as Brain Pop. All right. We're here on the breakout. So during our breakout, we're going to watch a video from AMAZE. You're going to have access to resources I've created or my county's created and preview those lessons. You also have an AMAZE lesson from their website. In your groups, I really hope you can discuss some things you like, or maybe you would change, or maybe some taboo topics about that subject that you've come across, any experience you've had talking about sexting, gender expression, sexually transmitted infections. Just really take this moment to work with your learning community. And then we'll come back together in about 15 minutes and share that information. Anybody from group 1 have any conversations, anything stand out about the video or something you guys discussed as a group?
Hi, Adrian from DC in group 1. Sorry, fussy newborn. I definitely was explaining to the group that we had the sexting conversation, and it was great to see that the young person had a trusted adult to kind of allow them to know about the consequences that can happen with the ramifications of just it being child pornography. We don't ever see it from that part. We always see it kind of from the victim's point, like, oh my goodness, somebody asked this question. Also, it was good to see that that young person also stated that they were pressured into sending it, that it wasn't their own thoughts. So I think that that was a good viewpoint to see, because we also don't realize that they're actually being pressured, or could be being pressured, to actually do these things, as opposed to just automatically assuming that they wanted that act to occur. So really good viewpoint, and definitely something that is super relatable to our youth. So I absolutely love it, and I definitely will be using it.
That video hits home. So same with my audience. On the slides, if you really click through, you'll see the COMAR, again, regulations and laws that govern consequences in the state of Maryland for children under the age of 18 sexting. Just this past year, or 2019, they changed the law. Prior to 2019, the parent was actually being held accountable for sexting charges. That has changed, and now there's 3 different consequences when it comes to essentially using a photo as blackmail or in harassment and other things. Like I share that with students, and I sometimes say bypass administration and contact your local office because you can file a report, and this is a criminal offense. So I emphasize that with all my middle school students. Moving on, we're going to go ahead, and I was in group 2, and would anybody love to share from group 2 a little bit about the video? I know not, if you were in group 1, you didn't see the video from 2 or 3, and vice versa. So someone could go ahead and explain a little bit what they watched in the video for gender expression.
I can jump in and say that it was a little animation with song about people, children, students, I guess, identifying, choosing their clothing and like expressing themselves and their gender in that way. And yeah, I thought it was great. I did think it would be for more of the younger crowd, like younger middle school, and yeah, I'll let someone else share. Oh, I can also say, like, when I browsed through the lesson plan for it, I really liked the idea of, like, what if an alien came and didn't know anything about boy and girl? And I think as a teacher, I would also ask my students, like, how do adults act with babies differently, like right from the get-go? Like, what are the differences that people do for boys and girl babies right away? Yeah.
I also had some great feedback about some terminology in our group, and just kind of staying up to date with all the changes in terminology. It's really important. Can relate to babies. I also will sometimes just Google Walmart and show the different colors and gender identities based. I'll just search Walmart shopping or toys, and you'll see the pink aisle and the blue aisle. And so it's in one of the slides, there's a conversation piece that you can have with students about norms and expectations placed on genders. And so lots of things to branch off and do with that. All right, we're going to go ahead and move on to group 3, the most entertaining video, sexually transmitted infections. How did that go?
We liked the video and how it related the STIs to like any other infection you can get, similar to like COVID. It's easy to get even with taking all the right precautions, but that it is different and you do have to have contact with those people. And then we talked about, some of us were familiar with another AMAZE video that specifically talks about STI stigma. So we did talk about that a little bit and the way that it breaks down stigma in the video that was given to us, but how we also like to go a little more in depth about, let's make sure that we're not making anyone feel like just because this happens, it's wrong and it's bad, because while we're talking about we want to avoid STIs, we definitely don't want to shame people for having them.
Sounds like you have some prior experience. I'm curious, what age group do you feel like that typically fit into for you, for your group?
We didn't talk about specific age groups, that we do that for most of us are community educators that cover 5th or 6th and up. My personal experience with it is I've been reworking our lesson that we have for special needs. So regardless of age, we're looking at the special needs community.
Hey, I'm back. I want to uplift some comments because everyone's talking about the importance of the STI stigma and shame. And especially when we're thinking about our young people in middle school, about all of the myths that they hear, right? And how we can utilize AMAZE videos to bring to life and perspective and to educate in regarding ways of STI transmission. That's not by kissing someone, right? That's not by obtaining and contracting an STI by sitting on a toilet seat, right? So using these pieces and re-emphasizing and identifying and bringing to words and to light what is stigma and what is shame. Because as educators, we talk about it, right? We know what that means, but for a young person in middle school, they may not be able to identify and really connect those dots to what that means and looks like. So for Jamie, and then also for Patty, who mentioned it in the chat, and then Outly and sharing that with us, I do want to go ahead and uplift and acknowledge that too.
When you get a chance for the STI, there is a Google document for that one, and just adding as much resources, I think, for our students to have access to. I think I included the STI sexually transmitted infections report, and just like a little building engaging activities. You may or may not have access to some of that stuff. Yeah, it does. I'm typically introducing it in 7th grade. That's my age range, but I think so much, having a conversation and, not having a stigma and being open to just discussing it as a medical condition that, a lot of kids are like, well, what is it? And so having a conversation about medicine, just like we go to the doctors for a cold, these are illnesses that are treatable, especially with our chlamydia, our syphilis, those main 3 are bacterial infections. So the 2021, thank you, Nora. The 2021 Youth Risk Behavior Survey came out yesterday and looks at sexual behaviors among youth. That is something our community, our family life advisory committee, we actually preview all of that, and we try and direct and build curriculum based on that report. It is so influential in having an understanding of our student body and our audience. And thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and Amy, so for those who would be reviewing the recording, I want to go ahead and uplift what you were talking about earlier in regards to that health communication, right? And that STI. So one of our participants said, I start talking about communicable disease in 5th grade. And then in 6th, 7th, and 8th, all the lessons are on STI, from testing, prevention, condom use, and beyond. Makes sense to talk about in a health class. Absolutely. So I love how you brought light to that, Amy, on how we can start talking about this early with our young people who are in 5th grade, and then how that information builds upon for each grade level, right? And then also Nora dropped again in the chat. So we'll be sharing that resource for the 2012 Youth Risk Behavior Survey, also in a follow-up email with the recording. So thanks, Amy.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I think for the last time, I have one more slide. And of course, technical difficulties. Here we are. All right, I think I gotta get back there. If you could leave us a brief comment about what you enjoyed, what you saw with the AMAZE videos that you're going to use with your students. We would love to hear your voices.
Well, I started working with parents and the kids, and they enjoy the videos, the AMAZE. It's like parents understand a little bit better the stigma and take away that scare they're talking about sexuality and with his kids and everything. And with the kids, it's like more easy and don't see like with that idea that, oh, I can see this is like some inappropriate or things like that. It's like they see that and understand. And when I present the different kind, because I working with adults with IDD, they asking and they are curiosity and why is this and all the stuff, and they interesting and participate.
Yeah, it's engaging, and like you said, students want to be able to talk to that adult with that information. And I agree that our AMAZE videos are able to get their attention, make them understand that this topic is safe to talk about. Thank you for sharing. I'm reading Madeline's feedback. Building that rapport and that trust with students. Again, if you have a moment, Brene Brown, amazing. We were talking about her HBO, huge resource. Dare to Lead goes through that engagement and that trust and that vulnerability piece. Highly recommend that book. Thank you for sharing. All right, and you have a link in the chat, and it is a session evaluation. Get some feedback. And oh, thank you for sharing.
No, thank you so much, Amy. Thank you all for being with us on this Friday. So I hope that you all gained so much information, maybe some new links to some of our amazing AMAZE videos, and also ways that you can not only utilize it within your health education setting, but also if you're working with a nonprofit or after school organization or club, how you can go ahead and utilize and implement these videos to expand learning and expand an area for fun and excitement with your young people. So once again, this webinar is recorded, so you will have the opportunity to review it. We'll be sending that recording out within the upcoming days, and then also the wonderful PowerPoint and resources and takeaways that Amy has provided. Once again, Nora, thank you so much, Nora, for guiding our chat today. Has placed the evaluation link in the chat. We welcome you to please fill it out and give us your honest feedback. And without further ado, we thank you all so much for being here and have a wonderful rest of your Friday and a great weekend. Thanks, everyone.